Well, good morning and happy Wednesday, everybody. You are listening to K-Talk Radio. This is the PrepperCon radio show, and as always, it's Scott and Shane, the prepared guy over here. How you doing?
I'm good. I'm liking that it's warming up here a bit.
Oh my goodness, it feels like summer.
Get outside and do some more stuff.
Well, this feels like summer for me. I'm not a real hot weather fan.
Me either.
I'm so happy between about 48 to about 70.
Yeah, 60 for me. Maybe 65. 70s.
Well, see, 70 is t-shirts and shorts,
Yeah,
tromping through the wilderness, like
Yeah, if it's 70 down here, then it's 50 in the mountains, and that's good hiking weather.
perfect camping weather.
Yep.
Oh my gosh, today we have an awesome topic. We're talking bugging out, and we've actually got a special guest later in the show. Utah Safe Haven. We've got Skip coming in. He's the man. When it comes to bug out locations, they've got you covered. While you're listening, check him out. UtahSafehaven.com. Skip will be here. He'll be answering questions. He'll be talking about his philosophies and their philosophies on bugging out. That's actually our topic for the day. One of my favorites.
The quintessential topic of preppers. Bugging out, bugging in, sheltering in place, bug out vehicles, bug out bags, bug out this, bug out that. Get home bag, get home, that is the quintessential topic for preppers. If you're not preparing for that issue, whether it's bugging out or sheltering in place, you're missing the whole thing about preppers, right?
Well, what's funny is so many preppers I talk to will get on my case when I talk about my first plan is to stay home. And they're like, no, you need to bug out before things get too bad. And I'm like, well, okay.
Yeah, no.
And there's always going to be an argument for either side, and we totally encourage your calls to give us your opinion. 801-254-5855 is our call-in number. The lines are open, so feel free to give us a call this morning. Talking about bugging out, talking about your opinions, your beliefs, things you've learned as you've tried to prepare for bugging out or bugging in. I like both. I think there's a time and a place for both.
So what is bugging out, Scott? I mean, I think some people have heard what that means, but what really is bugging out? What does that mean? Okay,
so when the crap hits the fan, so to speak. Other people use more colorful terms for that.
When there's an emergency.
Most of the time when people talk about bugging out, it's due to either an economic collapse, social collapse. Yeah, social collapse. It's governmental control. Military enforcement or invasions. That's what most people talk about.
Excessive rule of law.
Yeah, some people talk about bugging out when there's a natural disaster.
Yep.
I'm headed to the hills. Okay, So the question is when do you bug out? Bugging out means I'm leaving what I have at home, taking what I can carry or transport, and going to a new location, a safe location. I have one of those, which I think is a pretty phenomenal little place. We're right on a river.
Yeah, it's a very nice place.
Shane's been there; he's seen it. There's a few challenges with that location, but it's also far enough away that I think the remoteness of it is good.
Yeah, absolutely. That's one thing I want to bring up is distance, location, resources. If you're bugging out, you got to know where you're going. You got to have a place to go. You can't just say, "Okay, I'm headed to the wilderness."
Well, one of the number one killers of any wilderness situation is exposure. You're out in the wild, something happens. Weather changes on a dime. You're out in the wild, weather changes, all of a sudden it's raining, you don't have enough clothing or shelter to go to. Hello, hypothermia. Goodbye, buddy. And that's one of the biggest factors you've got to think about when you're bugging out. Do you already have a shelter in place to go to? Do you have a location, and is your location close enough that you can get there?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing that most people need to consider when it comes to bugging out is, first of all, where do you live now? Do you live in the middle of downtown Salt Lake? Do you live in Murray? Do you live in Sandy? Do you live in a highly populated area? Your biggest danger when there is some type of an emergency, whether it be an earthquake, whether it be social collapse or financial collapse or whatever we're expecting, is population. That is going to be your biggest danger. And as we've said so many times on the show, is that most people a vast majority have only 3 days worth of food in their home.
actually less than half of the United States
Yeah.
has a 3-day supply of food in their home. So that means that more than 50% of the people in this country are 3 days away from walking into starvation.
From chaos.
Yeah.
Literally from chaos. So if you live in a location where there's very high density population of people, you maybe don't necessarily know your community very well, you don't know the people around you, or you don't trust them, that is one situation when I would say plan on bugging out. And when I say plan on bugging out, you literally have to make some serious plans, not just say, okay, if this happens, I'm going to leave. Okay, that's great. Maybe you got a bag ready. Maybe you can stock your car up. Maybe you have a trailer. You can put some supplies in. But the most critical aspect is, where are you going to go?
Yeah, a lot of people think, oh, I'm just going to go into the woods. I'm an avid hunter. I know what to do.
I know this prepper over here. I'm just going to go knock on his door.
Well, let's talk about the woods first. Okay, you run into the woods. You think all is well. Well, where are you going?
Yeah, I've heard a lot of people say, well, I've got a camping trailer. I'm just going to pull that. We're going to go to this national park over here. They got water. They got electricity. We're just going to camp out there.
How many other people are going there?
Exactly. How many people have that
If it's
plan?
that hard to book, I mean, have you tried to book a national campground spot? You're sometimes having to go 3 weeks out. You can't
Yeah, or more,
anymore. You can't just say, "Hey, I'm heading out this weekend." And if you think you're the only one going to that spot, guess what? You're going to have neighbors.
And how many supplies can you carry with you in that trailer?
And are they neighbors you know?
Yep.
You're going to have to go through the whole trust cycle, building that relationship with those people. So the strategy, I'm just going to run into the woods and live there, not a good strategy unless you've planned it all out, unless you have resources, unless you have other like-minded people, which brings me kind of to the lone wolf idea.
Yeah, exactly.
If you don't have a plan, if you don't have a group you can rely on, a community, you're going to be in a worse situation than you currently are.
And we've talked about that quite a bit, is the lone wolf strategy. Okay, I'm really good at bushcraft. I know how to make a shelter. I can hunt. I can identify wild edible plants, so I can survive by myself. That's all fine and dandy. If you are capable of doing that, you practice, you've trained, and you say, I'm just going to head to the hills. I know where I'm going. I know where the creek is. I know where the spring is. I know where to get water. I can hunt. Fine. I mean, you may have a good chance of survival. Me, I've got 5 kids. That is not going to happen. That is just not a viable option whatsoever.
Feasibility is another challenge. Can I really make this journey? And a lot of people think, well, I can just hike 73 miles to this new location and be safe. Well,
253 miles, actually.
can you hike 70? Okay, can you hike 253 miles? When's the last time you hiked 253 miles?
Never. I mean, I could make it, honestly, but my family, most of them probably could not.
And that's the challenge. We are living in a time where people have gotten so conditioned to instant gratification, to on-demand everything. On-demand radio that you're listening to right now. You might be listening to the app. And if you are, we thank you. If you're not, and you want a better connection, anywhere you go, download the app.
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's a fantastic way to listen and join in on the conversation. But what do you do when that's all gone?
Mm-hmm.
The hour before here, we were talking about suicide, and one of the factors or one of the contributors to it is that social connection, and a lot of people are replacing that with social media. Man, when I go camping, I am so excited to turn off my phones, everything, tablets, and it's funny because I'll sometimes forget that it's in my pocket, and I'll be like, oh yeah, what's that doing there? And I'll toss it in the car. I'm like, I don't need it.
Kind of like what I was saying a little bit last hours, that us preppers get a little bit excited for the power to go out, the grid to go down, and maybe to be some type of emergency so we can jump into action. And I think that's a part of it. We just need to disconnect, and I think that's probably the bigger motivation. Just we love it. Okay, we got a week-long vacation planned in the mountains. We're not going to have any electronics. That is really, I think, what it comes down to. That's kind of a good bug-out practice right there.
Yeah. I think it's funny because we use the term disconnect, but I kind of look at camping and that wilderness aspect as reconnecting. Reconnecting with how life is. I read a study a while ago talking about when your sleep rhythm, and that you can actually, within 3 days of camping, sleeping in the wild, disconnecting from the electronics,
or reconnecting, like you say.
It reconnects you with your body's internal timing, and it helps you get back onto a better sleep pattern. So if you've got insomnia, that's one of the simplest ways to get your body back into rhythm. There's an actual rhythm that our bodies are on, and if you know what that's called, give us a call. I don't remember all the technical terms, but it works. I've done it myself.
Yeah,
and
that's true.
If I've just gotten way out of rhythm and my stress levels are higher, spending 3-4 days in the woods, magic. It just changes everything. And so I think that's why as preppers, a lot of us love the concept and love the idea of bugging out, but we also have to make sure that we have a good plan. And so let's talk about that plan. We're actually going to spend the whole next segment talking about the right way and the wrong way to bug out.
Perfect.
And I think the first thing that comes to mind is education. You know, you cannot put together a good plan unless you're actually doing good research.
Right, you've got to have the gear, obviously, but if you don't have the skills, gear only lasts for so long. Things wear out, they break, you run out of supplies. But if you have the skills and the knowledge, you can replenish those. You can live off the wild if you have to.
Yeah, and it's funny, we've got a stack of books sitting in front of me.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about this.
I pulled them out of my bag and I just slammed them up on this desk. I've got about 8 books here. This is what I consider to be a treasure trove of knowledge and information, and none of these books are brand new. These are all from I guess you'd call it a yard sale. First book I've got here is Build It Yourself Homestead. It's got plans, it's got schematics, it's got skills, it talks about how to put together your own chicken wire and stake bins for your hay bales, building snow fences, has instructions on how to build a geodesic dome.
Sweet.
Like, it's crazy. It's got all this cool stuff. Storage containers.
These are probably stuff that our ancestors, I always say ancestors, not that far long ago, 50, maybe 100 years ago, that this was their common everyday knowledge.
Yeah. Using hay bales as
Building
kind of
structure.
your food storage, because you can actually use it as insulation, kind of create your own little pantry there. Another book, Cold Weather Survival. Now, if the crap hits the fan this week, do you think you really got a shot at it running into the wild?
By myself, yeah, but I'm not living with my family, sorry.
Well, just anybody listening, do you think you can actually hack it? Because with winter snowstorms, with winter challenges, the number one thing that's going to be the problem is exposure. Again, cold weather, hypothermia, other problems. You know, you might get stuck in a massive snowstorm.
I can build myself a cabin real
fast.
quick, you know. I'll just take an axe and I'll just build the cabin really quick, you know. I can do that in a couple hours.
Snow cave's going to get you off a lot farther in survival. But I mean, this is great because it talks about uses of wool, talks about understanding distance and direction, how to navigate in a blizzard, different types of structures you can build, staying dry. I mean, there's so many neat little resources out there, and all it takes, I mean, this book, it's a quarter of an inch, but it's a great little resource.
It's like the 70s.
Yeah, this book was actually done.
And I think that's one thing that I think about all the time is that you think the most current, most accurate information is going to be what's the most current. That's not necessarily the case.
Right, and this is 1981. Here's another fun one. We're coming up on our break here, but Boy Scouts of America. This is the handbook from
That's an early one too.
1960s, I believe. But it's great because it's got all the color pictures, so it shows you how to do everything. But I mean, how to navigate, how to communicate, Morse code, wilderness survival, everything and anything you could think of just to get started. This is probably my favorite book. We're running to a hard break. We'll be right back. You're listening to PrepperCon Radio on K-Talk, AM 630. Hang in there. We'll be right back with you. Well, have you made up your mind? That is the question. He's made up his mind. Have you made up your mind on what is your strategy for bugging out? We're having fun today. We're talking about bugging out, bugging in, sheltering in place. Bugging out is a fantastic way to go if you have a really good plan, if you have a location, if you have resources, if you have knowledge on what to do, how to do it. And we just started talking about this treasure trove of books. These are all things you can find. Army Navy surplus stores. You can find some great resources there. I mean, Amazon has a ton. But you can also, this is my favorite, yard sales. Yard sales, yard sales, yard sales. You're going to find books like this all over the place. I mean, the next 2 books I have are the Army Department of the Army survival manuals. The 1992 updated version and the 1970 version with a lot of wonderful black and white drawings. The 1992 version has twice the thickness, a lot of those same wonderful drawings, but then they've also got some fantastic color pictures of plants, so you can actually identify the plant, understand which parts are edible, which parts are not, what can be used for medicine. It's fantastic, and I love resources like this because you can throw it in your backpack, throw it in your car, you know, and when you've got downtime, pull it out, read, practice some skills, but also use that on your camp house. Use that to practice your bug out scenario.
Okay, I'm a little bit out of it. I'm geeking out here on a couple of flashlights that Scott brought in from J5 Tactical, one of our latest sponsors for PrepperCon. So I apologize. I'm a little out of it here.
I know, you can't put anything in front of Shane, otherwise you just lose it. It's like it's like a cat and a little laser dot.
What?
And you're just chasing it all around the room.
Ooh, flashlights.
Very cool. So he's checking out J5 Tactical. They're actually one of our sponsors for PrepperCon. If you want to see their products, Shane's going to be doing a review soon.
Yep.
Of these products. They're lightweight. They're really compact. You can use them in a lot of different things. Really high lumens. The cool thing is they're going to be at PrepperCon. You'll be able to come get your own. Or if you can't wait that long, go to J5 Tactical. That's J5 Tactical.com and get your own. So getting back on these books. So survival guides, wilderness medicine, weapons of the street. This kind of goes into play with our conversation a week ago, talking about non-traditional, weapons.
Is it done? Well,
these guys have bats, crowbars, a 2x4, improvised knives, broken bottles, like all these different things you can use on the streets, things you can find and grab and use. And it's about 30 pages, written by Ted Gambardella.
It looks like an 80s book as well.
It definitely is an 80s book. A lot of these are 80s books. Then we've got the last book I've got here in this treasure trove, all found locally. The Sense of Survival by J. Allen South. It's a comprehensive guide. And this one, it's kind of fun to go through and find highlighted passages in other people's books. This guy talks about everything from your diet all the way down to vitamins, where to find those vitamins and minerals, how to get them, what types of food in the wild is going to provide that for you, as well as in your garden. Cool. Anything and everything. And it kind of goes back to 2 weeks ago. If you want to survive, you need to know how to garden.
Yep.
You need to know how to forage. You need to know how to garden.
And that can be hard if you're bugging out.
Yeah. So one of the things I like is have a cache of food and resources where you're going. Really great to have some sealed seeds, some preserved seeds, because those you can then, if you don't have tools to start tilling the ground, as soon as spring hits, and a way to protect your garden, because deer are going to want it, rabbits are going to want it, birds are going to be coming in. You're going to have a lot of other things you have to worry about, but you need to plan for that, because a long-term stay in the wilderness is not very long-term if you don't have a long-term plan to go with it.
And that's when we talk about bugging out. My advice typically is don't bug out unless you have a plan, but also depending on where you live. Like I mentioned, if you're in a high population area, you need to plan to bug out. Otherwise, it can be acceptable to plan to bug in, but you have to have resources. And I think that's what we're really going to talk about here. This last segment is resources, land, where you can go, your plans on exactly how to get there. But you have to have those plans laid and in advance, like a garden. Are you going to bug out and then take all your tools with you and then plant a garden and survive for decades on that garden? No, I don't think so.
So I think the first thing, when you're thinking about bugging out, the first thing you need to do is actually write down a list of your resources. And that includes your skills. Write down what you have, what you need, or what you think you're going to need for this journey. And start planning to that. If you're not planning to that, if you're not working on those things first, it doesn't matter where you're going to go. You need to start putting together your resources and your skills. Then you take from there and you start scouting locations. If you don't already have a location to go to, start scouting them. This is fun.
Yeah, it is. It's absolutely fun. And that's also a big part about it is, okay, where should I start looking? Do I look just over the mountain? Do I look, what kind of distance Do you recommend being from a large city, from a main road, from a small community? I mean, I have all those kind of recommendations, and that's really the key is where are you going to go that has the resources that you need, that you can get to. If there's a big mountain pass you got to go over, and you got to bug out in the middle of winter, and it's closed over winter, there's a lot of plans you have to lay.
Absolutely. The how you're going to get there is just as important as where you're going. If you only have one way in and one way out, and the weather's so extreme you can't get through, there goes your entire plan.
Yep.
Right? If you can find 2 to 3 ways in and out of your area that you're going to, great. If it's so far that it's going to take you a few days to get there, you need to have places you can stop along the way that are safe.
That you've maybe cached some supplies.
I know.
And say we do experience an EMP, how are you going to get there? How are you going to get all your stuff there? Are your gears there? So there are a lot of things to definitely consider.
Absolutely. And if you don't have a place figured out yet, that's actually what our next guest we're going to be talking about is those opportunities. So you've got your gear, you've got your skill sets, you've got the things you've been working on. Now you're starting to look at places you can go. In addition to that, you need to make sure you've got travel methods. How am I going to transport whatever I'm taking with me to where you're going? And Shane brought up a really good point. Caching. Caching is so cool. Now there's a lot of different ways you can do it. One of the most popular ways is through PVC pipes, getting large pipes, capping each end, obviously having one end that you can pull off the cap. But it gives you a way to put some resources along the way, so you're not having to hike 80, 90 pounds on your bag the whole way to your new location. You'll have food, you'll have resources, but here's the thing, is you've got to go check on those periodically to make sure they're still okay, they're still not tampered with, and know exactly where they are, but keep them in a place that not anyone's going to just walk by and say, oh hey, there's this little tube sticking out of the ground, let's pull on it and see what's in here.
It has to be a very specific plan. You have to know specifically where you're going, your different options. And these are topics for full other shows that we could talk about. But I think bugging out in general can be something even more simple. Say you have a family that lives 500 miles away in a particular city that's a small community, and you've made arrangements with that family to say, okay, if something happens, we live in a high population area, and we know we will be safer to get out, at least maybe temporarily.
Yeah.
You've already made plans, you've already moved supplies to that family's house where you have other resources and you have other community to go to. So that could be a very good bug out plan in itself.
I think that's actually one of the best bug out plans, is when you have somewhere to go, but there's also other people there that you know and trust.
Exactly.
Anything about survival, all of my philosophies, for me, it's always about community. I'm pretty fortunate in the neighborhood that I live in. It's just high enough and just outside the city enough that most people aren't going to be coming up to bother me. But my neighbors are awesome. Like, legitimately, amazingly awesome people. But if things go downhill, literally I'll have to go downhill as well to get out of there. Or hike up over the pass. So my options are kind of limited. So I need to know in advance all the different routes and know how to get to where I want to go. My bug out location is about 2 hours away driving.
Yeah, at least.
So hiking, that's a few days. That's like 4 days, easy.
At least.
And that's in good weather, great conditions. As soon as it's bad weather, inclement challenges, goodbye bug out location for at least a month. Everything we're doing when it comes to emergency preparedness, when it comes to bugging out when the crap hits the fan, is about simplicity, redundancy. You need to have multiple options. And so I'm going to actually just jump in now. We've got a special guest here, Skip, from Utah Safe Haven. We met last year through PrepperCon briefly, and he's actually running Utah Safe Haven, which is bug out locations. You also have a ton of other resources on your website. How did you get into prepping, and how did you get into bug out locations?
It's kind of an interesting story, Scott. We moved up here about 2 years ago. We had a first grandbaby, and Mama said we have to move. So we got up here. And we had been looking for land up here a couple years previous to that. And so we actually discovered a company that's headquartered out of Heber City. and their sales office is in Fruitland up on the 40. And they sell land in Duchesne County. And it's quite interesting that we went out there and found our place of land. You know, you literally walk a piece of land and you say, this is the place. You know, and so we found a piece of land, and then the grandbaby came along, we moved up. And last year, I was able to talk that company into attending PrepperCon. And they said, well, we don't have anyone that could do a trade show. And so, okay. My wife and I have done a couple trade shows. My wife is now works for the company. So I'll give you a couple days and I'll go do the trade show for you. So we went to PrepperCon and enjoyed the heck out of it. I had a lot of fun. Went home exhausted, which is what you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
And you know, the biggest problem about PrepperCon is we were so busy we never had time to actually walk the show.
That's the problem.
You know, so and we generated more. The goal with that is to introduce the company to potential customers, to show them what we do, and we want to generate some contacts, and so and get through those contacts, they come out and buy property for us. Of course, we generated more contacts in those 2 days than what our company normally does in a month and a half.
Fantastic.
Wow.
That's awesome.
And because we had a specific market that people were interested in our product, and we're rather unique in what we offer. Since that time, with PrepperCon coming up on the horizon again, I have been hired by the parent company, okay, to do trade shows, and I also run a subsidiary called Utah Safe Haven. My parent company, Mountains West Ranches, as I said, is headquartered in Heber, and they focus on the land, and so we sell land. And a lot of our customers will come out there, and probably about 90% of them are closet preppers, but they don't really want to admit it.
Well,
That was me about 4 years ago.
And I speak prepper. You know, I've lived off grid for a number of years and just absolutely enjoyed it. And so the company hired me to come out and speak prepper to people. And so we formed Utah Safe Haven about 6 weeks ago. And our job is we take the next step, because a lot of times we have people come out and they look at this land and it's semi-approved. We'll put pads on it, we'll build roads into it and things like that. And they say, okay, what next? Well, we need shelter, we need energy, we need water, we need power. You know, I already said power. You know, we need food. What do we do next? Okay, that's Utah Safe Haven. We can help you take the next step.
So you work from the beginning to the end. You help them put together their plan. Well, identify the location, then put together the plan to make sure it's going to work for them.
That's correct.
Absolutely awesome. Absolutely awesome. So you kind of started the subsidiary about 6 weeks ago. So far, what have you guys been focusing on?
Right now, we're focusing on. I'm trying to find partners for solar powers that so we can come in. A lot of customers will come out to us and they look at us and say, okay, but I want water and power. Okay, and from my parent company's standpoint, they say, well, we have some lots that have city water, city power. Okay, and I'm looking at them and say, okay, wait a minute, I can do that. Okay, so we're trying to set up partnerships right now with companies that provide off-grid solar systems. A lot of the solar companies down here in the valley, you know, they're great at grid tie.
right.
Okay.
Yeah.
But they know.
But
yeah.
when it comes to off-grid, they kind of stutter a lot. Okay.
Well, because it's a whole different beast. I mean, having battery banks, understanding how to use them, how to store it safely. You know, a lot of the tie-in systems don't even touch.
And the components are
battery banks.
completely different between a grid tie and an off-grid system.
Yeah,
in
you've
most
got
cases.
different types of charge controllers, different types of configurations.
Yeah.
So that's pretty cool. So you're going to be able to handle anything and everything that they throw your way when it comes to getting the property perfected.
Pretty much.
Awesome.
You know, so it's, you know, whether Utah Safe Haven does it themselves, okay, and we're working on that. It depends on the partnerships that we build. But we just point to a vetted partner that says, hey, you need to talk to these people over there. They'll put a solar system for you. You can trust them.
And I noticed on your website that you're basically making it a blog,
Yeah.
right, where you're posting those resources and those articles to where your clients can get informed about particular topics and, like you said, where to get their supplies and their knowledge.
Exactly. When we started looking into the company, we started doing a survey of all the resources that was available here in Utah. And there's a lot of resources available, but there's no single point to go to. Okay, you know, there's some out-of-date websites that are available, things like that. So, you know, part of my goal is that we want to become the #1 information aggregator for preppers in Utah. Okay.
Awesome.
And so there's a lot of little things on there. You know, we want to get people to come to it. Of course, it's UtahSafeHaven.com, and come in and you know, take part in it, not only read some of the articles there, but we have a forum, okay? So we're trying to get that open and get some discussion started, because people have various ideas. I know that what I would do for shelter, okay? Other people have other ideas. As I was listening to the show coming in, you're talking about, bugging out to the wilderness and taking an axe and building a cabin. That doesn't happen.
Right.
Well,
So I was being facetious there.
Not easily, right?
yeah.
So, one of the things that I love is in my bags I have different types of shelter starters. And that's going to help me get to where I'm going. But when you get to where you're going, you don't want to have to start over and build another shelter. You don't want to have to figure everything out again. So you want to make sure that's ready to go. And we're actually coming into our hard break here to do station identification and take care of our sponsors. But stay tuned in. We'll be right back. We've got Skip with UtahSafehaven.com. They're going to be at PrepperCon. They're actually one of our headline sponsors, platinum level sponsors. It's almost as high as it gets. And they've got some really cool stuff. So stay tuned. We will be right back. All right, welcome back to PrepperCon Radio. We have a special guest in house today, Skip with UtahSafehaven.com. They're quickly turning into Utah's one-stop location for bugging out, preparedness. Primarily, land is kind of your origin, it sounds like, of where this all started for you. During the break, we're actually talking about where he's going next. He's going to be at the RV show. So if you guys want to get a sneak peek on what Utah Safe Haven is doing, head over to the RV show. It's is it tomorrow? Is that when
It starts tomorrow and runs through Sunday at the Southtown Expo Center.
Fantastic. So great opportunity to see what's going on there. Listen in and please join in with questions. We actually have a caller coming in right now. So we want to hear what you guys have to say and any questions you have about bugging out and maybe even philosophies and theories as well. So,
Absolutely.
Caller, hey, you are on the air with K-Talk. What have you got for us today regarding bugging out? Oh, hold on.
What are the prices on the land starting out there?
All right, so what are the prices on the land starting there?
Oh, that's a good question. Most of our lots right now, we keep about 30 lots active in inventory at all times.
In what area?
It's in Duchesne County.
Okay, it's a pretty big area. I mean, by Fruitland, by Fabiola.
Between Strawberry and Starvation is a good way to describe it. Our sales office in Fruitland, we have some lots in Bandana Ranches that is just north of our sales office. We have some lots that are south in the valley, further south in the Pinnacles, further east out by Duchesne and Roosevelt.
I love the
Starvation
Pinnacles.
and stuff like that.
I'm sorry?
Or Starvation and stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, we have a couple great lots at Starvation. Our prices typically run right now around, I think our least expensive lot right now is around $24,900.
And how many acres is that?
I'm sorry?
How many acres is that?
5 to 10 acres. It depends on the actual lot. For example, some of the lots that might be higher in elevation would run 24.9 and they run 10 acres. So it all depends on what you're looking for. Then the important thing about Safe Haven and our parent company, Mountains West Ranches, is we do all our own financing. Everyone qualifies. Okay, low down payment.
I've got some land out there already. That's why I'm trying to secure it. But I bought it a long, long time ago. And I've held on to it. And
Is that-
it's grown out there. And that's it.
So do you use that for recreation at this point, or what do you use that land for?
Well, I've got quite a few pieces of land, and to be honest with you, I haven't been out there in 5 years. I got a trailer out there. I used to have paint on it. It looks like a jet stream now. So it must be worth more money then, I guess. I used to use it for recreation. I did some hunting out there, and like I said, I've got some other properties that are more of interest to me.
Now, do you have a bug out plan in place? Is that someplace you would go if things turn chaotic here in the valley?
Well, I gotta be honest with you guys. We're talking about this whole bug out scenario. And, I don't know if any of you guys hunt. Do any of you guys hunt actually?
I don't.
During the season?
I've been wanting to get into hunting for years. I just grew up in a household where you didn't hunt. So I personally have not ever hunted. I've shot a few squirrels unintentionally, intentionally, but as a stupid youth.
Years ago, you used to go around anywhere in the state, and trying to go hunting now, our food sources are going to be wiped out in a matter of days. If there's ever a global financial crisis, that would be the worst case scenario. An earthquake or something would be different, but if there was ever something of that nature, all hell's going to break loose, because just trying to go out hunting anymore in this state it's packed.
And I think that's
People-
particularly true along the Wasatch Front here. You know, we're so close to the mountains, and we already know there's tons of wildlife in the mountains just outside our foothills here. So I think you're absolutely right. Yeah, if you think you're going to survive off hunting, especially along the Wasatch Front here, it's not going to last long.
Well, the other thing is, and you've probably experienced this, people go a long ways to go hunting. You know, you find the pristine spot, you go there, right? Is that what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I go clear, I've been all over the state, and like I said, over the last 3 years, the population of people hunting in these areas where I used to never see anybody for days has changed.
Yeah.
There's people everywhere now. And I think it has a lot to do with technology. You know, we have better GPS systems. Off-road vehicles are a lot more, you know, these razors and everything. People are just everywhere. And I just, you know, I used to think of that scenario that you'd be safe doing a bug out. But I don't know. I think it's a big problem. This population has just expanded
Awesome.
dramatically here in this state in the last 30 years that I've lived here.
Yeah, it absolutely has, and I think that's a really good point. Thank you so much for your call. We appreciate you calling in today.
Hey, thanks for the show. Appreciate it.
Okay, thank you.
No problem.
Yeah, I think that's one of the reasons why we're talking about bugging out today is many of us, and not everyone, but many of us will need to get out of this population center when it's time. And what Skip's got is golden. I mean, and that's one of my favorite places to head out east, head out toward Duchesne, toward Vernal, out that way. Fantastic area, great resources, and I personally love it out there.
It's a beautiful place. It's the running joke right now is I've had people come into to the Hunt Expo last week and they said, well, what about this certain location that I'm not going to name? And I just kind of laughed and I said, no, we don't have anything there. And he said, why? He said, because I have property there and I don't want any more people around. Okay, but it's great to go out there and just listen to the silence. And you know, as the caller was stating, you know, the areas around here, you know, the hunt. If people take out to the woods, the hunt or the prey is going to vanish pretty rapidly. Okay, where our lots are, okay, my lot is surrounded by wildlife management area in state lands and reservation. And if you know, a lot of the hunters now, if you can't park your fifth wheel, they don't go there.
Right.
Okay, but you know, so if you're willing to put a backpack on and hike a little bit, there is some untouched territory really close by. And it's just gorgeous. You know, there we have lots with, as I call it, hot and cold running elk. Okay, it's you know, I sat on my property over the 4th of July as we're starting to build it out, and it was early in the morning. I watched a herd of deer just pass within 50 feet of me.
That's
You know,
fantastic.
and
I think you're absolutely right because you know, so many people with the new side-by-sides and with the four-wheelers and motorcycles can get so far, you know, off the beaten path that there's a lot of lazy hunters out there, and you tend to leave the beaten path.
Yeah, exactly. You know, so we founded Utah Safe Haven as a place to bug out. You know, and our tagline is the perfect spot to bug out to. You know, it's kind of like the old Ghostbusters line, like who you gonna call? You know, and our line is where you gonna go.
Absolutely. Well, I think a lot of us think we've got a plan, or we've got this theory that we can just go find a place last minute, or we can go carve our own space out of the woods. And you know, if you think of all the people who tried to do that in history, you know, you only know a few names. You only know a few of those mountain men who survived and who made it through. It's not easy.
No,
It is ridiculously hard to just go out and carve your own home out of the woods. Build, you know, as Shane jokingly said earlier, oh, I'll just go build my own cabin.
Yeah.
You know, good luck. You know, I've got the tools to do that, but one of them is a chainsaw. And when I run out of fuel, I can't just hop on a car and drive back into town. I can't hop on my bicycle and drive back to town. My quads and my ATVs and the razors, those are all going to be fuel requirements there too. So you have to have planned ahead. You need to have shelter where you're going.
Exactly. The important thing that we learned long ago when we moved off grid, you know, my wife was a senior vice president of a bank. Okay, I was a vice president of a bank. And we moved to Utah, or came to Utah for a 4-day weekend one week, went back and quit. Okay, came to Utah, no place to stay, no place, you know, no jobs. Okay, I learned to drive a D9 Cat. I literally dug ditches for a while. I you know, worked on a pack line doing manual labor. I went on the road trucking for a while. Whatever it took, in order to put food on the table for my family. And that's a lot of hard work. When you move off grid, it is hard work.
Absolutely.
Okay, when you're raising your food, we raised pigs and we had the chickens and the turkeys and we raised our food in the garden and plus we had to chop wood to heat our house because we used a wood cook stove and my water was run by a 40-foot air motor windmill that pumped into an 1,100-gallon tank that then was pressure fed by a 12-volt pressure pump that was run off a solar wind system. Okay, you have to know how to maintain all that. So the most important thing you can get is the education. If we look back to our heritage in this state, okay, as the people moved west, they got these huge wagon trains. The important thing to think of is not how they got there or where they're going to, but what was in the wagon. What did they bring with them to survive?
Great point. When we have something happen, we have to follow the example that they set. It's funny because the people who founded Utah, a lot of times they forget there's other religions that were involved at the same time, but Mormons get all the credit. If you go to This Is the Place, you'll find out that there were Jews and Catholics and other groups that came with them. And they were just trying to get to a safe haven.
Exactly.
Which is kind of funny that that's the name of your company. And they brought very little as far as food and clothing, but they brought tools.
And skills and
And
knowledge.
skills. And those same tools and skills, for our day and age, have fallen by the wayside. If we have to go back, which we will, we're going to be in the same situation. We're going to be building hand carts. We're going to be building ways to transport ourselves and our families to a safer location. And I, for one, want to be as prepared for that as possible. And that all leads to skills and knowledge development. And that's why I love books. I'm not a voracious reader. I'm a dabbler. I'm a skimmer. But I get sucked into areas that I think, wow, this is really going to help me. I need to know this. And then I just go nuts. For me lately, I'm learning ham radio so that I can go get my license. Communication's going to be key. But on my list, solar, going off grid, understanding wind energy,
And
pumps.
one thing people need to really understand is when you live off grid, you can really do with a lot less. You don't need the big screen TV. You don't need the computers on 24/7. And when you live off grid, you're going to want to live with less.
Exactly. What Safe Haven was founded for is you got to remember the rules of three. Okay, you can survive 3 minutes without air. Okay, you can survive 3 days without water and three days without food. Okay, the important thing that we skipped over was you can only survive 3 hours without shelter.
Yes.
Okay, and so you're talking earlier about if you had a bug out right now in this time of year, you need shelter. You need to learn how to provide shelter. Safe Haven can help you with that. We have what we call instant shelter. That can put a wooden tent. We have a building out there from Columbia Buildings, we would put on. So it's Safe Haven, UtahSafehaven.com. Follow us on Twitter. Follow us on Facebook. Okay, come see us next week at the shows. We're doing a giveaway on a Goal 0400 Yeti solar generator right now. Go to our website, go to Facebook, come to Twitter, come to the shows and enter. And we'd love to talk to you.
Thanks for coming, Skip.
Thanks. We appreciate you, Skip. We will be talking to you again real soon, and catch you next week.